So in this video, we're going to go through the process of moving an XaMiner from a really crappy internet connection out here in the sticks to a high performance connection. Stay tuned. So you might be wondering why. Why are we doing this? Well, the reason is because long term, our XaMiner is going to have preference if it has a better connection. It's going to be able to take on more data faster. That's really the idea behind it. All right, so I'm going from an 18 megabit plan, which is extremely slow. It's like archaic. But I'm going to a 1.2 gigabit plan, which is pretty high for performance for residential. It's going to be much better performance. Not going to be able to utilize all that performance right away, but eventually I will. I thought I'd also mention that there's no reason why you can't get away with a 400, 800 megabit plan. That's perfectly fine for where we are with this network currently. But I had an opportunity to move up to 1.2, so I'm going to do it. And also, this video is for the XaMiner specifically, the miner that you purchased from the ScP Corporation, you know, the black box. But it's not to say that you can't use the same process for the DIY, but for the DIY, I want to do something a little bit different, and so I'm going to make a different video for that. What's different is that I want to have remote monitoring for my DIY units, meaning I want to make sure that I have access to the operating system of that computer whenever I want to. Whereas with the XaMiner, you don't really need to access it. Other than to check the wallet and a few of the other statistics, you really don't need to do much with the XaMiner. That's the beauty of it. So I'm moving Jill this time, and there's not a lot to this other than you just need to make sure that you disconnect everything, make sure you got all your cables and everything before you head out. But the one thing that I have to mention is that the IP address is not going to stay the same. So when you get to that location, we're going to have to do some stuff that's kind of not really special, but we need to identify the IP address once it gets plugged into the new network. So the one thing I just wanted to mention real quick also is in regards to internet service providers, service plans, internet service plans, and the whole port forwarding process. So I'm going from AT&T, where they give you kind of a run-of-the-mill router. You set it up in your house. When you want to make changes, you log into the router right off of a browser off your computer that's connected to that same network, and you go into the firewall section, and it's the whole port forwarding that you might do if you're setting up games or something like that. Which is kind of a traditional way of accessing your ports and making port forward changes. Now with Xfinity, they have a little bit of a kind of maybe an upgraded method where you access all the port forwarding through an application on your phone. So you log into your account where you pay your bill and you do all sorts of different things. Set up, if you have TV, you can change your streaming plans and so on off this application on your phone. But also you can access your internet settings as well, including port forwarding. And so that's how I'm going to show you how I'm doing it with Xfinity today. But just know that depending on the type of ISP and the type of internet connection and hardware that you have at your location where you're setting up your XaMiner, that method is going to be likely different than what I show you today. So just fair warning on that. So as soon as you get your miner hooked up, which is this one right here, I got Jill in here today. Getting her hooked up. I've already done the other two, Teresa and Brianna, but I got Jill going now. So I got the Ethernet and the power hooked up. It automatically kicked on. You can see the little blue light is on. And then from there, we're going to open up the app on my phone. And so I'm just going to pause for just a second and talk about ports. Now the default ports for the miners right out of the box are 4282, 4283. And so you have to do two things when you do this. You have to set the ports not only on your router at home, in your network, to the ports that are the same settings that are set in the miner's UI. Okay, so you got to make sure that they match. And that's critical, actually. Nothing will work unless you do that right. And so when I brought Brianna over to this specific location, I set her up at the default ports, which is 4282 to 4283. Okay, so I set her up at that. I set the router at that, and I set the miner's UI up at that. So everything was cool. Then the next miner that I brought over, I set 10 less, basically. And so you just go in basically 10 port increments, either up or down. Okay, so for Teresa, I picked 4272, 4273. and I set both the miner's UI and the router through the Xfinity app for those port numbers. Okay, so now with Jill, what we're going to do is we're going to go up 10. And so, and it doesn't really matter what direction you go or what numbers you use. You just have to make sure that the miner's UI and the router for your network have the same port settings. Okay, otherwise, like I said, nothing will work. And so we're going to set Jill to 4292, 4293. So yeah, once the app is opened up on your phone and you're connected to your network, of course, you can go to the Wi-Fi button at the very bottom. From there, you're going to go to Wi-Fi equipment so that you can see the device. You need to find it first. So we're going to scroll down and we're going to find XaMiner. You can see I've already got a couple other XaMiners in there, but I've renamed them, and that's what I'm doing here. So I open up that XaMiner and I go to device name at the very top, and I'm going to change it to XaJill because I give them all names. And it's important that you change the name to something different because you're going to be going back and wanting to look at them and recognize them differently if you have more than one at this specific location on this network. So you're going to want to be able to differentiate. So once you've done that, you can scroll to the bottom and you're going to see the IP address. The IP address is important to take note of because that's how you're going to access the miner's UI in just a minute. So when we change the ports on the UI, that's important also. So, but first, let's go ahead and go through and change the ports for this. We're going to go to Advanced Settings, and we're going to go to Port Forwarding, and then you're going to look for XaJill. And once we find XaJill, we're going to right here is where you see XaJill. Well, you don't see it, but this is where I opened up XaJill and I'm changing it to 4292 to 4293. And my protocol is TCP. So I don't show it very well in this video, but I changed the protocol to TCP only. That's important to take note of. Once you've done that, of course, you save it and you delete out any other port forwards that are coming in at default. Okay, so once you've gotten your IP address, go ahead and type it into the address bar above. So once you've typed the IP address into the address bar above, it's going to open up the XaMiner UI. And the key point here is that when we did our port forwarding earlier, I set it to 4292, 4293. And so that's what it needs to be set to. And so to change it, what I did was I clicked on these blue numbers, which they were orange. If they're orange, they're wrong because the system's not recognizing those ports. So you click on the number and you put in change port section, you put 4292, 4293 up here, and then you hit update ports and it'll automatically go in and it'll change them. And once they turn blue like these have, you know that it's correct. The next step is to go up above and we're going to click on the stats page. Then when you go to the stats page, you're going to notice that it's going to show red offline. You wait about, I don't know, 20 minutes or so and it'll automatically scan and the system will check your miner and it will recognize it and it will convert it from offline to online, and then you know you're done.